Hey champions, welcome to tonight's edition of the Motivation to Elevation Facebook Live podcast. It's yours truly, Arian Tyson, the Moving Motivator, and I am sitting in my office here in St. Louis, and it is a privilege and honor to be back before you tonight on a very relaxed Tuesday evening here in the STL. Before I begin, definitely want to send my thoughts out to those that are directly affected with the hurricane, now tropical storm Harvey, down in Houston and surrounding areas. My thoughts and prayers are really with you all, and I'm actually thankful that I was able to actually donate today to those relief efforts. It's one thing to hear people talk about what other people are doing, but when something like this happens, if we're able to, we all have a responsibility and obligation to do our part. So I'm thankful that I was able to do something today in reference to being able to help those who have been directly affected by the flooding in Houston and in Corpus Christi and etc. and in other places in southeastern Texas and even in the western part of Louisiana, because they're getting rain and flooding as well. Having said all that, thanks for everybody tuning in. And so let's dive in. The subject today, I want to talk to you about something, because when things like this happen, when things out of the ordinary happens, we tend to really start, really looking at our beliefs, and we really start to see people get exposed for the frauds that they really are, so to speak. And so I want to talk to you about how are your beliefs keeping you bound. Hey, Natalie, I appreciate that. You rock too. And I was thinking about this because I was reading something recently, and it was an experiment that happened. And there was an experiment that took place recently in the Caribbean. And there was a marine biologist. And this biologist placed a shark into a large holding tank and then released several small fish into the tank with the shark. And as you might expect, the shark quickly darted around the tank, attacking and eating all the fish in sight. But the following day, the biologist put a piece of clear fiberglass into the tank, creating two separate sections of the same tank. And so the biologist put the shark on one side and then put the fiberglass divider, the clear fiberglass divider, and another set of fish on the other side. And so again, the shark attacked. The shark went into attack mode. But this time, the shark slammed into the fiberglass and bounced off of it. And so undeterred, the shark kept trying, kept repeating the behavior every few minutes to no avail. And meanwhile, the fish are swimming on the other side, unharmed, on the other side of the tank. And eventually, an hour into the experiment, the shark gives up. And so this experiment was repeated several dozen times over the next couple weeks. And each time, the shark got less aggressive and made fewer attempts to get the fish, until eventually the shark got tired of hitting the fiberglass divider and simply stopped attacking altogether. And so this marine biologist, the story says that the marine biologist then removed the fiberglass divider, but the shark did not attack. And the shark was trained to believe that a barrier existed between it and the other fish, so that the bait fish swam wherever they wished, free from harm. Now you're probably asking, why am I telling you this story? It's quite simple. Because many of us, after experiencing failures and after experiencing setbacks, we emotionally give up and stop trying. And like the shark in the story that I just told, we believe that because we were unsuccessful in the past, we will always be unsuccessful. And in other words, we continue to see a barrier in our heads, even when no real barrier exists between where we are and where we want to go. So allow this to be your wake-up call. Why? Because we all have incredible power within us. I'm going to say that again. We all have incredible power within us. Now, certainly, we also have our own fiberglass dividers, if we be honest about it. Those self-limiting thoughts and beliefs that often hold us back. Sometimes it's something that may have happened in our childhood or an old failure. And sometimes it's something we were told when we were a little younger. And sometimes it's just a lack of self-confidence that gradually sneaks up on us over the years. Whatever the case may be, I'm going to share with you 3 things that you need to know and remember. Number 1, much of what you believe about your failures and limitations can easily be debunked. What do I mean by that? Can I be transparent with you? Honestly, for far too long, the people in my life had me convinced that I wasn't good enough. Now, looking back on it, I'm not one to hold grudges, but as I think about some of the things that I've gone through and where I'm at in life now, I have no grudges, but I'm happy. But I'm so happy that I'm able to prove to myself that they were wrong about me all along. And that's something that we have to realize, because although our circumstances that we go through in life are unique to us, I bet that some of us can relate on certain levels. I know I can, because sometimes the pressure and dysfunction coming from family, coming from peers, coming from co-workers and society in general is enough to make us feel completely broken inside. And if we do things differently, we're looked down upon. If we dream big, we're often ridiculed. Or if we don't have the right job or the right relationship or the right lifestyle or belief system and so forth by a certain age or time frame, we're somehow made to feel like we're just not good enough. Hey, cuz, and I'm glad that you had a ball in Vegas. I looked at all the pictures that you and Ray took from y'all anniversary, so I'm glad you all enjoyed yourselves. But think about this. Okay, my pastor is saying, yes, absolutely wrong. Man of God, you're so valuable and vital to the body of Christ. Absolutely, absolutely. And the thing about it is, we often are our own worst enemy because of the self-limiting beliefs that get instilled in our minds. They often arrive at an early age. Maybe, for example, maybe you got cut from a sports team as a child, and thus you determined that I'm not athletic enough or to be fit and good at sports. Or maybe you went to high school or college and you broke up with an old boyfriend or girlfriend out of the blue and then immediately start dating someone else. And so they start dating someone else. And so we feel unwanted and unattractive for way too long. But for whatever reason, we encounter seemingly insignificant insignificant rejections that drastically alter our mindset for years to come. And it happens something like this. Prime example. We hear we're bad at something, or we have a bad experience with something, or we avoid trying again for a prolonged period of time because we want to avoid the potential pain and disappointment. Or we may, when we do try again, we try half-heartedly. We don't put 100% into it. So we can point to that and say, see, just as I predicted, it didn't work out. But think about this. We never improve in this area of our lives because we never commit to doing so. Anything that you want in life requires a level of commitment. Ask anybody that is in a relationship. Ask anybody that's married. Regardless to the changes that you and your spouse will go through, undoubtedly, the commitment level has to be there. And if that commitment level is not there, you're in for a world of hurt and a world of trouble. And because of that, sadly enough, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And we're left feeling not good enough every day thereafter something goes wrong. Does that sound familiar to anybody? And if so, it's time to break yourself out of this cycle. How? By proving to yourself that the belief holding you back, not only is it toxic, but it's false. And think about this. Think about one toxic belief that you have. And it could be any part of your life you hope to change, whether it's your health, whether it's your weight, whether it's your career, whether it's your relationships, anything at all. What's one thing you've essentially decided is a fact about your place on earth? And then immediately shift gears and think about one time, one moment, one defining moment in which the opposite of that fact was true for you. And I don't care how tiny of a victory it is, or how tiny of a victory it was, or even if it was just a partial victory. What's one moment in time you can look back and say, hey, that was totally unlike me, but I did it. I know for me, one time I actually did a 5K run for charity. A lot of people don't know that, but I actually did a 5K run. Or for you, it might have been you lost weight and you kept it off. Or maybe you went to the party and you're an introvert by nature, but at that moment, you actually became the life of the party. Or it was a time where you were used to getting bullied and picked on, and so you decided to stand up for yourself. Or maybe it was a time where you went through life feeling unloved until you came to that moment where you began to feel loved, or you learned a new skill, whatever it is. But once you identify the cracks in the wall of a self-limiting toxic belief, you can start to attack it. And you can start taking steps forward every day that go against it. Celebrating those tiny victories. More, and as you do that, you develop and gain more confidence, gradually gaining momentum and getting bigger victories and achieving more victories, and your confidence increases, and so on and so forth. Another thing is that what we have to realize is that our brains inaccurately matches patterns from the past with the present, which has given us many false beliefs and many excuses. Why do I say this? Because all too often we let past rejections dictate every move we make. And this is one of the most common and most damaging thought patterns we as human beings succumb to. We literally do not know ourselves to be any better than what some opinionated person or limited occurrence once told us was true. And so what happens is we get used to looking around and thinking things will never work out in our favor. But how many of you all know that as sure as the enemy is a lie, that's a lie as well? We must realize this. We must practice noticing our negative attachments to our past experiences so we can learn from these experiences and then update our belief system based on how our circumstances have changed as they continually do so. Because most things in life don't stay the same. And I've said it repeatedly. Our mindsets in 2017 should not be the same way that they were in 2007. And if that is true, if that is the case, that your mindset in 2017 is the same way that it was in 2007, you wasted 10 years. You wasted 10 years. Because in that 10-year span, you have become older. Hopefully you've become wiser. And you have experienced some things that you had not experienced prior to 2007. So your mindset should not be the same. It should be updating. And in other words, what we need to do is practice thinking better about the past and present so that we can ultimately live better from here on out. And what I've learned even from my own life experiences is that when an experience in our life has emotional significance, it gets tagged in our brains as being important. And when the emotional experience is upsetting, it triggers our brain's fear mechanism, which tells our brain to remain on the lookout for any future conditions that vaguely remind us of this upsetting experience. You ever seen someone go through a bad experience? Let's say a past relationship. And then they get into a new relationship. And the moment that somebody does something that sends them back to that prior experience, they fold up like a cheap tent. And I know I'm not the only person that has experienced that. You might have actually had that happen to you. And you're looking around and you're wondering, okay, what did I do? What's really wrong? Like, why are you flipping out like that? And that's something to really think about. That's something to really pay attention to. Because a lot of times when we go through things or we have a distressing experience or an unpleasant experience in our past and we choose not to talk about it and we choose to just bury it, the moment that something happens down the road that triggers that experience, we'll flip out on somebody and we will rob ourselves of what is meant to be a blessing, all out of fear. Just thought I'll put that out there. But think about this, because our brain tries to match new experiences with the original one. That's basically what I just said. But depending on how emotionally attached you are to the original experience, it can lead to a false pattern. It can lead to false pattern matches, which inevitably will lead you astray. And this is especially true when it comes to personal failures, mistakes, and misjudgments. For example, let's say you've been in a relationship and it fell apart. So now you believe that all your future relationships will fall apart too. So you might just stay out of a relationship, all out of fear that relationship, that new relationship is going to fall apart because all of the ones in the past did. But you can't live like that. Or let's say, for example, you got a really low score on an exam in school. So now you doubt your ability to take any form of a written exam. Or let's say you are at a particular job or employer and you didn't get along with an old boss. So now you have trouble respecting a new boss or a different person in authority. And again, these false patterns, these false pattern matches occur whenever you respond negatively or over emotionally to a particular past experience. And it all happens subconsciously too. Now, logically, you know that all relationships are completely different. But emotionally, you're inclined to respond as if they're all alike. And that's the trap. Because so if you feel stuck because you can't move beyond a negative experience from the past, then your brain is subconsciously relating to it as if it's still happening now. Which means we are undoubtedly our own worst enemy. But not only that, it means that it's matching patterns improperly in the present. And so allow me to give you a two-step solution that just might help. When a situation like that comes up, ask yourself a question. What specific past negative experience, and associated feelings do my present feelings remind me of? And you have to really dig deep and be honest with yourself. That's one point. And the other point is, once you have determined the origin of your present feelings, begin to list all the ways your present circumstances differ from that past original experience. And this should include the places, the people, and the details that caused you pain and discomfort. And review the differences over and over until you have completely memorized them. Why? Because this can help you realize and remember that your circumstances have indeed changed. And finally, the third thing that can keep us bound is when we begin to feel stuck, and is when we get to the place where we're feeling stuck and incapable and not realizing that it's just a feeling. Feeling stuck and incapable is just a feeling. It's not a fact. And why do I say that? Because just because someone else can doesn't mean you can, right? Because you're not good enough, or you've already missed your chance, or it's just not in the cards for you. You look for reasons they can do it, but you can't. And that's not reality. For example, if you're in business and you're pursuing entrepreneurship, maybe you looked at someone that's had success and you said to yourself, well, maybe he or she's an internet entrepreneur and or a freelance writer because they have no children. Or maybe she's way fitter than I am because she doesn't have all the work and family obligations that I have, or have a more supportive spouse, or doesn't have bad needs, etc. Okay, fine. It's easy to find excuses. But look at all the other people who also have considerable obstacles and have done it anyway. And think about this. Many people who are successful have their own families. Some of them, most of them, if not most of them, have children. They have dealt with significant losses in their lives, and they still manage to succeed in many areas of their lives. And the thing about it is, despite what the obstacles may be, I'm telling you, and I'm speaking from my own experiences, your obstacles can be overcome. Remember, feeling stuck and incapable is a feeling. It's not a fact. And so never assume that you're stuck with the way things are. Life changes, and so can you. It is a choice. And it's never too late to live a life that makes you proud. And if you don't learn anything else, learn that. Because there is no age limit on changing your course. But you may be asking, how can I do that? It's simple. You do it by putting one foot in front of the other every single day. And it takes one day at a time, one step at a time. But it also starts with you making a decision. And when it comes to making a meaningful change in your life, whether it's earning a new degree, or whether it's starting a new business, or whether it's writing that book that you've been putting off for a decade or 20 years because you don't feel like people are going to be receptive to it, or whether it's starting a family or becoming more mindful, or any other personal journey that takes time and commitment, you have to build daily routines, daily rituals into your life that reinforce that goal. It's about consistency so you can actually make real lasting progress. Nothing worth having, nothing truly worth having happens overnight. It takes a process, and it takes a level of commitment. And if you are someone that is, let's say, you have a phobia of commitment, you're never going to be successful. You have to commit to something, and you have to be consistent at it. And it takes progress. And remember this: goals don't make positive change happen. Daily rituals do. I'm going to say it again. Goals don't make positive changes happen. Daily rituals do. And it takes consistency. And they say it takes a minimum of 21 days for something to become a habit. So what do your habits look like? What does your daily routine look like? Are you consistent at it? That's something for you to think about. So to recap, as I wrap this up, I shared how are your beliefs keeping you bound? And I shared 3 things that we need to know and remember that will unbind us from our limiting beliefs. Number 1, we have to realize that much of what you believe about your failures and limitations can easily be debunked. That's number 1. Number 2, we have to realize that our brain inaccurately matches patterns from the past with the present, which has given us many false beliefs and excuses. And then finally, we have to remember that feeling stuck and incapable is just a feeling. It's not a fact. And if you don't remember anything else, remember this: behind your feelings is nothing, but behind every principle is a promise. I'm going to say it again. Behind your little feelings is nothing, but behind every principle is a promise. And there's a lot of people that are going through life not living on principle. They're too busy in their feelings. How's that worked out for you? That's all I'm saying. But I want to thank each and every last one of you all who have tuned in. I trust that something that was placed on my heart to share was of value to you. If it was, feel free to leave me a comment in the comment section. Feel free to share this podcast once it is up. And as always, remember, in life, you have 2 choices. You can make moves or you can make excuses, but you most certainly cannot do both. Thanks again for tuning in. And if you have not already done so, feel free to check out my website at www.motivation2elevation.com. Again, that's www.motivation2elevation.com. Again, it's yours truly, Arian Tyson, the Moving Motivator. Thank you so much. It has been a pleasure serving you tonight. I will be back next Tuesday, same time, 9:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time for another edition of the Motivation to Elevation Facebook Live podcast. Peace for now.